Welcome to Seeking Disability, the show that helps you in seeking disability. I'm Tom Duncan of Duncan Disability Law.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
So, Dad, one of the first things that we covered both in episode 1 and episode 2, and as it applies to step 1 of the sequential process, what types of programs are available to people and what might they qualify for?
Well, there are two primary programs that comprise most of the disability system. There are a few other programs that are very technical and are allowed that only apply in very certain limited circumstances. The big one is disability insurance benefits. Then there's supplemental security income. Additionally, there are things called disabled adult child. There are widow's benefits, and there are a few other benefits or a few other circumstances that apply. A seasoned representative can tell you which programs apply to you, even though you may not understand or realize there may be additional funds that are there that were higher levels of funding for you than what you think.
All right, so since disability insurance benefits covers the majority of claims that are sought before the Social Security Administration, let's start there. What exactly is disability insurance benefits?
Everybody is familiar with their paycheck and what is listed as FICA.
And if you're not, you should be.
Yeah, it's on your paycheck. It's on your pay stub. Again, FICA is the Federal Insurance Corporation of America. That's the trust fund. Okay. So a portion of that funding goes to your retirement account. A portion of it goes to survivor's account. So if you pass away and you have dependents, especially minor children, they can receive benefits. And then part of it is your disability income. So if you become disabled, then you can be paid out of that amount of the trust fund based upon your earnings. That's what disability insurance benefits comes from. So it is a formula that's used to calculate, based on how much you've earned and paid into the system, what your amount is per month that you would be receiving.
So how does one qualify, or how do they know if they're qualified to receive disability insurance benefits? Or let's say, I guess, not receive, but how does somebody know whether they qualify to apply for disability insurance benefits?
It can be rather complicated, and there's simple ways of figuring it out. That if I've been teaching this for years to other people, but the simplest rule is have you worked for 5 out of the last 10 years? And that will be your eligibility for disability generally. There's some things that you have to worry about, but again, a rep will understand this. And if you're in the process of applying Social Security, can look at your earnings record and tell you a lot about whether you actually are insured or not. And when I say insured, I want to explain this to everybody. Disability insurance is actually insurance, just like car insurance. When you stop paying your car insurance, they eventually cancel you. Your policy lapses. That's what happens with disability insurance. You stop paying into the system, eventually your policy lapses. So if you work steadily for 5 years, 10 years, whatever, and then stop, generally you have coverage for about 5 years afterwards. It varies again, depending on if you earned enough or didn't, etc. But that's generally how it works.
And so with that, and to borrow your example a little bit, if you have an accident before your policy expires, obviously the insurance company is supposed to cover you for the eventuality that you might have an accident. If your accident happens the day after your policy expires, you're on your own. And it works very similarly when it comes to disability. You are covered if you can prove that your disability started before your insurance ran out. They are covering you for the inevitability of potential disability. However, if your disability doesn't start until after that date, then you are not insured. And so what you're trying to allege as part of the qualification standard is that you had your disability start while you were insured. That's how you qualify. Okay, so we talked about the other primary type of Social Security and disability that people would apply for. That's social supplemental income. So what is SSI?
SSI started out as a program that when people didn't earn enough because, they didn't pay enough into the system, that SSI would kick in and give them additional money to get them to the poverty level. But then they changed the rules probably 50 years ago to allow SSI to also be for people who never qualified for disability insurance benefits or lost their insured status. So SSI covers people who do not have coverage. They haven't worked enough. They lost their insured status. And so those people can qualify, but there are certain requirements. They have to have assets below a certain level. They have to have only one car. They can only have one house. They're very limited on their amount of money that they can hold and assets they can have.
And I think the asset total in full, other than the exclusions that are necessary, was roughly $2,000 in total assets and earnings. So if you have a bank account that has $3,000 in it, you're not going to qualify for SSI. If you own a snowmobile or a boat, you're not going to qualify for SSI. Unfortunately, the SSI program is a needs based program. And so you need to, in essence, be needy in order to apply and qualify for that program. However, some additional examples of who might be able to seek this as far as whether or not you have a work history as part of this. So those without a work history are obviously not going to be insured. One of the other places that you'd look is somebody who was a stay-at-home mom or maybe was a caretaker for a family member, so they weren't doing a job where they were paying in taxes. They probably aren't insured. They would be out of luck unless they have an SSI qualification. Now, are there some other pitfalls to the SSI program?
Well, there are because, for example, spouses, they take into account your family income. So a lot of people stop working and they think, well, I should qualify for SSI even though I don't have insured status, except that they're married and their spouses has an income. Your spouse's income will be taken into account when they're calculating your eligibility for SSI. So there are a lot of people who struggle, have debts, bills, etc., but they don't qualify because their husband or wife is working.
And that's an unfortunate part of disability, but that is something we see a lot. So it's one of the downsides, certainly, of the SSI program is that there, like any other part of the program, some definite nuances to it that, again, we would recommend you would consult an attorney or a representative to make sure you understand whether you're qualified or not. Now, we mentioned a couple of other sub programs or smaller ones that don't cover a lot of disability, but we mentioned these as something else that people might be entitled to benefits for. One of them was survivor benefits. What is the
Correct.
survivor benefit program?
Well, basically, it's if you have a minor child or disabled adult child and you die and the child is dependent on you for income, then you can apply and get survivor's benefits, which is an amount that's equal to how much you had. One of the most famous examples is our former Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, whose dad died when he was a teenager, and he received Social Security survivor's benefits while he was in school. And it helped his mother support him and his brother as they were going through high school and helped them get to college.
Can you receive survivor benefits past 18?
If you're in an accredited high school, you can up until the age of 19. So it's 19 or high school graduation, whichever comes first.
One of the other programs that we mentioned was widows benefits. What exactly are widows benefits?
Okay, and that's a system where it's designed because a lot of women have not worked for a lot of years. It's changed now, so the widow's benefits program is not utilized nearly as much as it used to be. But if your spouse was completely dependent on you and you pass, she can apply and receive the benefits you earned on your record. Now, interestingly enough, it's not on widow's benefits, but it's kind of like widow's benefits, so I'm just going to mention it. So let's say you're married for 25 years and you've stayed home a lot of that time to take care of the kids. and your husband runs off and divorces you because he's met somebody else. You're not necessarily stuck because you have what's called an elective right. You can say to Social Security when you reach either retirement age, or if you're disabled, you potentially have that right to then say, hey, I want my ex husband's earnings record. Doesn't affect his earnings or how much he gets from Social Security, but it gives you a step up. In some cases, it's pretty substantial.
The last one we wanted to talk about was child benefits and adult child benefits. So, what exactly are child and adult child benefits?
Child benefits in and of themselves can be SSI benefits. And if you're under 18 and you apply because you have certain medical conditions, then there's a payment that's made to the parents. And the thought process behind this is if you're a parent and you've got a child with special needs or disabilities, you're going to have to take a lot of time off from work to make sure they're at medical appointments. You may even have to go to the school and be available at certain times of the day to assist the teachers. In those cases, benefits are provided under the SSI program to allow you to do just that. Now, adult child benefits are that if you're disabled prior to the age of 22, you can qualify for benefits that will last you through into adulthood, even though you've never worked. Because the condition is disabling, that in and of itself would allow you to qualify for those benefits.
Now, the standard for child benefits is obviously with SSI. And so, since it is under the SSI program, you'd have the same qualification standards as if it were a normal SSI case. However, the parent would do it on behalf of the child. One of the other things to note here is that once the child turns 18, they are judged as an adult. So just because you received benefits as a child or your parents did does not mean you necessarily will be qualified to receive benefits as an adult. You would likely have to go through the program again.
With an adult child, you actually can, the adult disabled child who's found disabled prior to their 22nd birthday, they can take money off of their parents' earnings record. So disability insurance benefits many times is much higher in payment amounts than an SSI payment, which is capped at, I believe this year's $932. Parents, a lot of times you'll see where they have children who are autistic or have cerebral palsy or something like that. It's going to be a lifelong condition. They're reaching retirement age. The adult child gets the benefit of their parents working.
Of course, there's a lot more information to share, but that's a good place to stop for this episode. If you have questions about disability, you can visit duncandisability.com or call 1-888-458-2406 to talk to the Duncan Disability staff. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Seeking Disability is a production of Ronnie Duncan Studios. This show is written by Dana and Thomas Duncan. It is mixed and recorded by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our technical provider is Riverside FM, and our distributor is Captivate FM.